staff report, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Oh, right, okay. I thought Commissioner Gunkel was missing, but he's not. All right, so now we're looking at 5532 Doyle Street. This is a proposal to demolish 2 existing residential units and replace them with 2 new existing residential units. So here is the site location. It's outlined in red, 5532 Doyle Street. Here's Doyle. Directly to the north is Stanford, and to the north of that is Powell. San Pablo is to the east, and Hollis would be to the west. So project overview, as I said, this is demolishing 2 existing residential units and replacing them with 2 new residential units. There's 5 separate sets of required findings for a conditional use permit, a development bonus which overlaps with the conditional use permit, demolition, design review, and variance. Here's the existing site. The arrows roughly coordinate with perspectives of the photos. As you can see, the existing one does not have much visual permeability to it. It's a very solid face with 2 basically small cottages behind it. There's space for 2 tandem parking spaces on the property that are existing. And here's some more photos from the rear. To the south of the property is a parking lot used for Doyle Street Cafe. And the pictures on the right are of the rear unit area. And here are the proposed renderings. It's a little bit different, as you can see. The front area is much more permeable in visibility, both into the site and out of the site with the windows and the low fencing. And it's all built on the north side of the property where there's a tall 20-foot wall that's existing on the adjacent property. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And here's a perspective from the south, the front unit and the rear unit. The parking is located between and underneath the 2 buildings for 2 of the spaces, and there's another parking space towards the back of the lot. Here's a proposed site plan, pardon me. There's a 10-foot required setback in the front, 15-foot required setback in the back, 3 foot on the side that overlaps also with the driveway area that goes the length of the property. And then no setback on here. This is what the variance is being requested for because it borders that 20-foot wall. This site plan correlates with the elevation below. So you're seeing both essentially the ground floor view as well as the elevation from the south. Here's the proposed ground floor units. The front unit is 1 bedroom. You go up the stairs to the bedroom area. And the rear unit is 2 bedrooms. You go up the stairs to the 2nd floor for the bedrooms there as well. The cars are placed between the buildings, and there's also an enclosed place for the trash separating the 2 parking spaces. And here's that upper floor I mentioned. There's an openness to both units. They're open to the 1st floor, so for the loft style, thus the title of Doyle Street Lofts. And there's the 1 bedroom, and there's the 2 bedrooms, as well as a large storage area for the rear unit. So here are the elevations for the proposed front unit. The front unit is highlighted here. This is from the south perspective. On the upper left hand, we have the east elevation, so that would be facing the rear unit. Next to that is the perspective from the street. There's the fence, an existing avocado tree that's to remain. And then this is the west elevation, so without the fence. And here's a proposed rear unit, once again highlighted. And then on the upper left, we have the east elevation. So that would be facing the backyard, and the west elevation, which would be facing the front unit. The proposed landscaping is consistent with the water efficient landscaping ordinance, which requires water efficient plantings and permeable driveways and parking areas to whatever extent is reasonable. In this case, it's most of the area. And also permeable pathways when they are also contain stepping stones. So here's the zoning analysis. There's several standards here, the first of which is the floor area ratio. The maximum floor area ratio that's permitted in this area is 0.5. The lot is approximately 3,000 square feet, so that leaves 15,000 square feet of living area. And the applicant is proposing total at 15,000 square feet, and 1,500 square feet total for both units together, combined. The building height maximum is 30 feet. This is substantially lower than that. It's roughly the same height as the wall that it's on the north side of the building, 20 feet. The residential density, the base is 20 units per acre, and the bonus is 35 dwelling units per acre. That calculates out to a base of 1 dwelling unit or 2 dwelling units with the bonus. The applicant is going for the 2 dwelling units, also because it's required for the demolition of the existing units. You need to replace the existing units 1 per 1, so this is an overlapping requirement. I hope I'm making sense with this. Okay, good. So 35 units per acre is 2 units, and he's also required to replace the 2 existing units, so this is consistent. Off-street parking, existing, there's 2 tandem spaces. The applicant is proposing 3 spaces, which is consistent with our regulations. And they're placed, as I stated before, towards the middle and rear of the unit. The required setbacks are 10 feet in front, 15 to the rear, and 3 on the sides. This is consistent with this, except for the north side of the property because of that 20-foot wall. And so a variance is required to remove that required 3-foot setback on the north side of the property. And demolition, as I stated, replacing both existing units. So conditional use permit findings. So the proposed use is consistent with the general plan. It provides a diverse mix of housing. It's preserving the residential neighborhood and character of the Doyle Street neighborhood. It's not increasing bulk or changing the character at all. The land use is consistent with the land use diagram of the general plan, the maximum building heights of the general plan, and the floor area ratios as well. Secondly, the characteristics and design of the proposed use are compatible with the neighborhood. It's in line with the other building heights and designs in the neighborhood. Thirdly, the proposed use is compatible with the utilities and emergency response system. It's consistent with the capability of the water supply, wastewater disposal, fire, police systems. It's not increasing the demands based from what's currently there. Fourth, the proposed use contributes to the general well-being of the community. The proposed dwelling units at this location will provide new high-quality residential units and home ownership opportunities in an existing residential neighborhood. Fifth, the proposed use complies with the planning regulations and is consistent with the planning regulations. The findings for development bonus. So this is for the 35 dwelling units per acre, which result in 2 units for this small site. Firstly, the proposed project is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in regards to building scale, form, materials, and street orientation. It is consistent with all of those things. Secondly, the proposed project minimizes the appearance of the driveway and parking areas. And this is true as well. There's a maximum width permitted of 10 feet for the driveway, and the applicant is proposing a 9-foot driveway. For demolition findings, firstly, the applicant will provide at least the same number of dwelling units as the demolished structures. The applicant is doing that. And additionally, one of the existing structures is a 1-bedroom and the other is a 2-bedroom. Of the new proposed structures, one is a 1-bedroom and one is a 2-bedroom. So it's consistent with bedrooms as well, which is not required, but is a bonus. Secondly, the replacement structures feature design quality that is at least as high as the structures to be demolished, and the design is compatible with the neighborhood. The proposed structure and design conform to the current code and are compatible with the neighborhood, and are improvement in that there is better visibility from on the property to outside of the property in the public right-of-way. Third, the elimination of the residential structures will not be material detrimental to the housing needs or the public interests of the affected neighborhood, and it is not they're providing the same number of units with the same number of bedrooms. Major design review findings. Firstly, the design of the project is consistent with the general plan. We've already been over some of the general plan findings. This is also consistent with these ones: the diversity of building types, preservation of existing small-scale residential quality of older neighborhoods, infill residential. It's not having continuous garage face, and it's providing activation at the lot frontage and minimizing the visible off-street parking. Secondly, the design of the project conforms to the Emeryville design guidelines. It uses permeable paving or materials for the driveways and pathways. It's considering the edge conditions and transition areas during the design to ensure compatibility. The way the site is designed, to the north, there's much taller buildings, and there's the 20-foot wall. Then there's these buildings that are at 20 foot high, and that steps down to the surface level parking lot. So it creates a nice slope. Also, the waste containers are screened between the two buildings, and as mentioned before, the visual and physical impacts of the parking are limited. Thirdly, the project is of a high design quality that is compatible with and will not adversely affect the surrounding area. And staff finds that proposed development is of a high design quality that is consistent with the design guidelines and is compatible with the neighborhood. For the setback variance findings, the proposal for which the variance is sought is consistent with the general plan. These are overlapping with earlier ones, same themes. Variance findings, the proposal for which the variance is sought is consistent with the general plan. So the land uses will be consistent with the land use classifications and land use diagrams. The maximum building height will be defined by the maximum building heights diagram. What this means is that the building height is consistent with that 30-foot maximum, and it's also consistent with the floor area ratios. Secondly, for the variance findings, a strict application of the planning regulations would deprive the property owner of privileges enjoyed by owners of other properties in the same zoning district. I apologize. So there's not many properties that, if any, that have a 20-foot tall wall along the property. That's an atypical situation. And requiring the 3-foot setback along that wall would not increase the light or really air circulation for the people on that property. And it would not, pardon me, and the wall prevents lights or views normally provided by required setbacks. The wall also provides additional site constraints on the narrow 30-foot lot, which would make it much more difficult and challenging to configure the required 2-unit replacements and parking. Thirdly, a variance is necessary for the preservation of the property rights possessed by other conforming properties in the vicinity, and a variance would not constitute a special privilege. So staff finds that a variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights that are possessed by other conforming properties that are not bordered by a wall over 20 feet in height. Fourth, granting the variance would not be material detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. So staff finds that the variance would not be detrimental to the public, and due to the existing solid wall, the adjacent property will not be deprived of light or air. And fifth, the conditions upon which the requested variance is based would not be applicable generally to other property in the same district. As stated before, there's not many, if any, properties with 20-foot walls along the edge of the property. Staff recommends approval of this project consistent with the conditions of approval. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is also here, Alex Bergtron, and he also has a presentation ready for you, so however you'd like to proceed forward.
So this project is not subject to the new impact fees that we've had, the developer impact fees?
It is, so it has, the fees were submitted with your packets rather, and
I'm thinking specifically of the, you know which question I was going to ask, the affordable housing?
Yeah, it's not because it's ownership. So
right, because they're, so
okay, so not for rent, these are not rentals.
That's correct. The applicant is proposing to do a condo map for these later, and that would mean that they're going to be ownership housings and not subject to affordable housing fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the ownership, because it's ownership, it's subject to the inclusionary housing ordinance, which was always in effect, and that dedication of affordable units doesn't kick in until a higher number of units.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question, just for clarification and understanding of the site conditions. The existing 20-foot wall
Yes.
for the Icon
Yes.
apartment building, that does not conform to the 3-foot setback for the property line, does it?
No, but those were built before.
Right, but
I'm not sure what the conditions of approval, but no, that site is also not conforming
So,
to
okay.
the, that's correct, to the
I just want to
existing
make that clear, that
standards.
it's currently not conforming either.
That's correct.
So you've stated that the height of the buildings and the height of the adjacent wall are about the same.
Yes.
I think the buildings are said to be a little bit taller, and in the rendering, the walls a little bit taller. Is there an elevation difference between the two sites?
Yeah, let me go back to photo for you here. Sorry, there's a lot of slides. I have a lot of findings to make this evening.
Oh, okay.
Front buildings.
So here we go. If you look at the bottom picture, this is taken from the parking lot in the foreground here where the car is, and then there's a wall, a fence that has vegetation over it. This is one of the units. You can vaguely see the 20-unit, this is existing unit, I should state. You can vaguely see the 20-foot wall behind it. And then behind that, on top of that, as part of the icon, there's the existing dwelling units are even taller.
Is that
Does that-
parking within that 20-foot walls, 20-foot high walls?
I'm
that
not
a garage?
100% sure about that. Is that the parking area? Does anybody know? It is parking? Yes. So it's a solid wall. There's no vents, there's no windows, it's just a solid wall.
And how that came about, you have no idea.
I wasn't here
It
at
has
that
to be a
time.
solid wall if it's on the property line.
Yeah.
Right, but being allowed to build on the property line.
Yeah.
That was a
It's there.
industrial building that was built a long time ago. I don't know the vintage of it, but it was quite a long time ago. The area at that time was either zoned industrial or not zoned at all. And subsequently it was vacant, lost its legal non-conforming status. It was rezoned to the residential zone it's in now. Wasn't allowed to be used for an industrial use, even though it was an industrial building. And so it was converted to a residential use. But the old industrial building just had a big blank wall on the property line.
So it's an adaptive reuse building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Any other questions?
Approved by the Planning Commission, I might note, although different people.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Sarah.
Sure.
With that, we'll invite the applicant up.
Evening, I'm Alex Bergtraun. I'm the owner of the property. I'm also an architect. I don't want to go through a full presentation because Sarah's done a really nice job. And I do want to say that working with Sarah has been great on this because we have been all over the map trying to figure out what we could do on this site. And we've tried different things that some were working with the zoning, some weren't, and working with Sarah was great because we think we've come to a point where we've done a very nice balancing act on that site. My office is at 5500 Doyle Street on the corner of 55th and Doyle. We moved there about 17 years ago, and the reason we moved there was because it's my favorite street in the East Bay. It's that and Hines Street in Berkeley are my two favorite streets. And when it came time to find a place to have an office, we decided that we wanted to find something on Doyle, and we were lucky enough to find that space. I bring that up because I just want to say how much we care about this street. It's really important to us. And we were fortunate enough to about 10 years ago be able to buy that property. And so we've been waiting with these two really miserable buildings on the site. We've had great renters on the site, but miserable buildings. And we've been waiting for the right moment and the right confluence of events to be able to take them away and put two new buildings on the site. And we feel that this is the moment in the economy that we could do this. We tried doing this a little bit earlier, but 2007 had a few things going on. We're here now. Just wanted to say that as far as the design elements, we looked at the 20-foot, 6-inch high wall as a design feature, and we wanted to work with it as kind of a case of making lemonade out of lemons. And we felt that if we used it as a backdrop and we kind of staged this building form off of it and cascaded the form down, that we'd be making the best use of that site. Pushing it towards the building was the only way to make it work, because if you look at the existing houses that are on that site right now, the front house has a very strange, about 3 or 4 foot space in between it and the wall, and it actually makes for kind of a scary situation. So pushing against the building, against the wall, made the most sense to us. We also looked at very carefully the permeability of view from the street towards the site. We started off wanting to take a building and push it way back on the site, and working with Sarah, we decided to move it forward to create more eyes on the street, but at the same time, we wanted to save the avocado tree that was in the front. We consider it a great amenity on the site. In fact, Charlie probably remembers me being the guy trying to protect the avocado tree when the Icon project went in, and so I thought I'd be a hypocrite if I came back and said, now let's rip out the avocado tree.
Yes, I remember it clearly.
Yes. The building that was there prior to the Icon was the Sunrise Specialties building, and they made bathtubs. And we were there when they were doing that. The Icon building going in was really a nice improvement for the site, and we feel that finally this is really, aside from the parking lot itself, this is the only blighted property on the street. So we think that we're adding some viability to the street. And I'm here for answering any questions if you have any.
I have a couple. Did you want to?
I forgot to mention that up on the dais is the materials board that
thank you.
Alex submitted, as well as some information about the fence.
Those were my two questions.
Okay, so I just cut you off
I
there
want
with
to know what
appropriate
the
information.
finish on the building is and what the fence is going to look like.
Yep.
So the finish on the building is going to be a smooth stucco, and the window systems are all going to be Blumberg, and they're going to be a bronze anodized. We like to do a dark bronze anodized system because we feel that the windows then recede in view. The latest craze of doing mill finish on aluminum windows is not our cup of tea. So we like to do everything that kind of fades back. And as far as the color of the stucco, it's not going to be integral color, it's going to be painted, because we really don't like what happens to integral color buildings when you start patching it over time. So we picked a color that's kind of a gray sky blue so that it would recede back in view. Since the Icon building was done in a very light palette, we didn't feel that we should come back and do something really strong and harsh. So we actually looked at a color palette from an architect named Le Corbusier, a very famous architect. He actually came up with a color scheme of patterns, and we picked a sky blue color that we really like. And this is the color from Benjamin Moore that we did. As far as the front wall goes, the structure of the fence, it's 4 feet high, is going to be the dark bronze anodized structure, but the infill mesh on it is a mesh from McNichols that's kind of a woven fabric, and it's composed of rods with a woven wire and stainless steel. So,
Is that transparent?
yes, it's 51% transparent.
And the wall is only 4 foot high?
Yeah, it's 4 or 4'6". I think there's a requirement for how high the fence is.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly if it's 4 or 4'6", but we did the height that's required for that front fence.
And as pretty well known, I'm not a big fan of stucco, but it's more for how they often have to be repaired. But as an owner of the building, that's a problem that you have to endure. But have you looked at combining other finishes and the materials along with the stucco to create more of a visual interest architecturally?
Yeah, we actually think that this is going to be really cool because we're using steel in a raw finish that we are going to be finishing off for the roof eaves.
Okay, so the fascias or?
Across here.
Yeah, okay.
And across here. And all the window systems, the Blumberg systems, are going to have a can't think of the word, metal, be powder-coated metal between the Blumberg oil rub bronze. And we're really excited about Blumberg because they went out of business for a while when Blumberg sold, Ralph Blumberg sold the business, and it's been bought by a consortium of people who really love Blumberg. It's very mid-century modern, and so has come back with thermally broken windows that we can do a really nice system for this. Actually, kind of the design partie we started from was looking at the Eames houses in Santa Monica, Charles and Ray Eames homes, and trying to create this industrial window system in a modern day finish that actually is thermally broken was the the partie where we started on that. And so we think that if you use stucco in the right way and in a controlled way, it can be really cool.
I guess I have one question. So the front unit has a door, has a sliding door that faces the street, right? Is that, I mean, it
We
seems to
consider
me
it their
that's-
front garden. And so it's looking out onto the front. The real entry is from here, but we're considering this to open up. It's the living room space for that unit. And we have brought in pavers to come to that front space, but we don't consider it the front door. We look at it as kind of a garden patio. It's a little bit of a different take on the way that front is being used. We consider the whole front piece of the building through as, we call it a lantern. And it's a composition that goes all the way up. So I wouldn't look at it as sliding doors at the bottom floor. I look at it more as the way the composition works all the way through.
Any other questions? Thank you. All right, with that, we'll open the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak on this item, please come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
I believe there was an email that you all received
Yes.
from a concerned neighbor. I just wanted to point that out.
Yep, thank you. So, you want to start?
I like the project. I think this is a perfect example of a zero lot line use. That wall is never going to be good for anything. When I lived in Stockton, a developer did 2 new developments using a zero lot line, and I think it's an effective use, providing more livable space on a really narrow lot. And it's like he said, it's kind of making lemonade out of a lemon. And I would like to see something other than stucco. There's a house by Berkeley Bowl West that's all green stucco, and it's very smooth, very modern, and it does look good. So I think this will be definitely an improvement in the neighborhood. And I think it's definitely right for the variance. That's it.
I think it's a terrific improvement over what's there now, and hope we see more of this in Emeryville.
I think that it's appropriate to grant the variance on that. There's not much you can do with a 20-plus foot wall. I like the way that the windows relate to the surrounding buildings in the neighborhood, but I would really like to see something on the upper story, at least on the rear building, that was a little bit more interesting. I think that the amount of stucco and those 4 windows, I don't think that the materials are rich enough, or there's something that is not looking, I think it needs more accent or something on it. I'm glad that the front fence is going to be permeable. That will activate the street, and I think that there needs, at least in the front lot, to be something more than just mulch in the front, besides the jade plant and the avocado tree.
I think that it's a really good use of a narrow lot. I also own a narrow lot with 2 buildings and have visions of what we're going to do with that property someday long term. It has a similar situation with a wall that's very close to it. So, I mean, based upon what you've submitted, I think it's definitely also appropriate to grant the variance. I don't really have any other comments on the design. I think it's in keeping with the neighborhood. I think it's, the choice of the stucco is personal. It's yours. It's not something I would do, but yeah, that's it.
So I will start by saying I really appreciate the kind of perfect storm of sort of development standards that you were up against. And I think you've worked really hard to come up with something that is good. I mean, it's crazy to me. I guess there was sort of no scenario that was allowed by right, because you had to preserve the 2 units, but then you needed a density bonus for 2 units. So that's kind of crazy to me. So I definitely, appreciate the situation you were in. And yeah, so I support the bonus and the use permit and the variance, although I don't like variances. They really should be used very selectively. I can support it in this instance. The one entitlement that I'm having a lot of trouble with, though, is the design review. I'm really concerned about the building and its interaction with the street. There is a finding that we have to make about sort of activating the street. And I was really encouraged to hear you say that you like the street and want to, and that's why you wanted to be there. But I don't know, just when I saw this building, I didn't think it. It seems like it's turning its back on the street, sort of. And the entrance to the front unit is around the back, and the existing house has a very usable front porch that hasn't worked its way into this design. The fence is the fence which you're allowed to do is 4.5 feet tall, but it's still a 4.5 foot tall fence. And it's kind of a cold material, and it's I don't know, it meets the requirements. It's 4.5 feet, it's 50% transparent, but I don't know how actually inviting it's going to look. I know there's a tall fence there now, but it's softened with a little bit of landscaping. I mean, it's not a very good, it's not a very good fence, but it's, at least has some softening with the landscaping. So anyway, I would support approving all of the entitlements, but I'm really, I really would like the applicant to work on sort of adding more interest to the building. I think Commissioner Donaldson was, noting that the rear building was kind of lacking interest. So I definitely would like to see additional articulation on both of the buildings, and just a reorientation of the front building so that it looked. I mean, this should look like. I mean, these are more or less sort of single-family uses. I mean, it's a duplex. It's 2 homes on a small lot, but they should look like single-family homes, and they should face the street like single-family homes and interact with the street like single-family homes. And I'm just really concerned that they're not going to do that.
Well, I think it does, because of what he describes as the lantern corner, which is 2 stories high, which definitely you're going to see over the fence, and becomes kind of a monument on the street, and particularly if you're driving north on Doyle Street. Your eye is going to be drawn to that. So I think it does give an identity. Definitely the rear unit, with its open back corner, is nice for the unit, but it doesn't say much other than that. And what you are going to see from looking over the Doyle Street, Doyle Cafe parking lot, is the rear unit 2nd story, which has kind of pedestrian windows sort of evenly spaced along there. But overall, I think the project's terrific.
And I'd like to chime in on that as well. I think, understanding what you're saying, I see this as a little bit more urban, and I do see, especially in relation to what's there, that this much more activates the street. Because if that's a back patio where people are going to barbecue, they're going to sit and have a glass of wine at night, the fence is permeable, they're going to see through it, people are going to see them. I think putting a door there just makes it a front entry that no one most likely would use. But I think this being a place that's a patio, it's going to activate the street, and along with the lantern component. And I like, in a perfect world, we can ask for everything, but what I like to do is compare what's there and how this improves on that. And I think this does all the things that it's asked to do. And as saying that it's pedestrian, I think, as the architect mentions, Le Corbusier is more of a stark, simplistic kind of architect. That, I mean, it's way back in the 30s when he did this work and stuff, but I think it's what he's trying to say is he's trying to do a modern adaptation of that. And sometimes for some people, less is more. So I think this, we have a lot of personal feelings. Like, I don't like the stucco, but I think it's someone's home, and I think in terms of for the city of Emeryville, this is definitely improvement, and I feel that it meets all the design guidelines myself.
I think I like the front building. I like the way that it relates to the street. I like that it's got the glass in the front and an entry, even if it's not officially called the front entry. It's at the living room. It's fine with me. But I think the thing that is bothering me about the rear building is that it reminds me of a lot of these apartment buildings that we have around town that are small two-story apartments that are very plain, very spare, have some square windows, and I'm not seeing a richness of materials that elevates it from that stucco that looks like the 4-unit small apartments that we have around town. The ground floor, I think, is lovely with the windows that mirror the industrial windows around the rest of it, and the front of the front building with the lantern, I think that works, and the stucco expanses are small enough and are they're in different places, so it's more interesting. But that one facade with the 4 little windows and the big wall of stucco is making me respond negatively.
So I'm willing to give in a little bit of my comments about the interaction with the street, but I am going to make a motion, I think, nonetheless, that we continue this item and give the applicant an opportunity to work on these 2 sort of concerns, to do something to address them.
And it's going to be a very visible
Would you?
Suggestions so we don't have to have.
You come back to the
Sure.
microphone. Yeah.
So one suggestion that we could make.
Oh, yeah. Is there a portable one?
I feel extremely strongly about not putting the front door on the front because of the whole concept of this lantern coming through. But there's another piece of it I completely forgot to mention. That is that we purposely brought the front door around so that there'd be more of a relationship, a communication between the 2 buildings. And by bringing it here, we felt that we're tying formally these 2 together, and we're also creating a relationship that will have the people speaking to each other more, and it's extremely important to us. As far as the windows go, the 4 windows, aside from the fact that the reality of this site is you really don't look at that elevation very much because of the way the site works, what we can do is we have 2 types of typologies of windows. We have the corner windows that we've brought the brake metal down to tie it into the forms of the canopy. And we could do the same thing with these windows, where we bring the brake metal up and it ties it into the eave around. We tried not to do that simply because we thought we had so much going on with the building that we were trying as a counterpoint to keep it a little simpler. But if the commission...
Use this if you want to apply.
Oh, this is great, thanks. But do you hear me? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But if the commission feels strongly that these windows need to have a little bit more articulation, we can do that by creating brake metal at the headers on each of those, and that will tie it into the form. It'll actually create kind of a dentil that ties in with the cornice wrapping around.
That would help.
How do you feel about that?
I think it would help.
It helps. It doesn't.
So the window itself would actually go up to the
No.
roof line?
The window itself would not, but the header, because on the corners we have this header of brake metal coming down. Right here.
Oh,
So they would add that
oh, I see.
there, yeah.
So the way we've been handling the corners, we brought the brake metal down to receive that. We could do easily the same thing here to tie them around. We already have it happening on this corner and this corner. It's just these 2 windows. It might be that it's not clearly shown graphically, but there's These windows are not like these windows. They are full of brake metal that ties the same form of the oil rub bronze wrapping around the corner. We could do the same thing here.
I think that that would help, and I would also really like to see a little bit of enhancement of the landscaping, especially in the front yard, because it's really bare.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that what we've shown on the landscaping is you have a big avocado tree that does a lot of shading, and if people really want to have some eyes on the street, the existing landscape that's there has completely taken over, that you have no eyes on the street because of it. But if you'd like us to add more landscape, we can do that.
You can put low-growing stuff, just bark mulch in the front yard is not going to last very well. I mean, there's plenty of low-growing, drought-tolerant shade things that will work in there. I just think you need a little bit more, a little more green.
What can you suggest to enhance the interaction with the street? Can we do a 3-foot solid fence instead of a 4.5-foot transparent fence, or?
To be quite honest with you, the fence that we're proposing is a very expensive fence, and we could do anything, but we thought we were doing something that would actually bring up the quality of the street experience on that. It's the only fence other than cyclone fencing that we have on that street, and so we wanted to make sure that the building material that we use actually doesn't feel just like a fence, but is kind of a building material. And that's why we went to McNichols, which is high quality braided material, and we thought we were doing a good thing.
Personally, I really like it.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is transparent.
It's transparent, and you've got big windows where you can see past the avocado. So I think it's fine.
We spoke with a neighbor from the co-housing who was a little bit concerned about eyes on the street, and I tried to explain to her that she would explain to the others that what we're talking about is a distance that is about here to that wall. And that's an 18-foot high wall of glass. And it's just 10 feet. It's not that much. So as far as your experience and engaging the street, the building itself is going to be really doing that. It's only 10 feet. The existing building that's there, the porch is at about 10 feet. The building itself is another 5 or 6 feet back, and it just feels always dark and closed. And that porch is not used the way, when people think of the word porch, that's not the porch they're thinking about. We're hoping that this will actually act as a lantern for the street. There are real concerns on the street about safety at night. And I mean, we've owned the building, as I said, for about 10 years, and there was actually a dead body that was left in front of this building, in front of the site. So we're trying to give as much light and eyes on the street as we possibly can.
I think that with the additional articulation of those windows on the south-facing side and a little bit of additional working with the staff to add a little bit of other landscaping other than mulch to the front, I would move approval.
I would second that.
Can I ask that we break the approval up into different resolutions for different entitlements, so that, because I want to be able to support the project without supporting the design review?
We've only prepared one resolution for you. And one thing I would note is that your action tonight is a recommendation to the City Council, because the City Council ultimately has to approve the project because it involves demolition of residential units. So the whole package, design review, use permit, variance, et cetera, is all going to the City Council for approval. And if we break it up into separate resolutions, if you deny one of those resolutions, you're still denying the project. So I would say it's either yes or no on the project.
That's fine. I personally want to make it very clear to the City Council that I support the project, but because of the design review, I can't vote for it. I can't vote to approve. So.
Well, one thing we can do is certainly when we forward this item to the city council as part of our staff report, we can certainly add a narrative about how any particular commissioner might feel in their support or objection to the recommendation, if that would satisfy your need to communicate to the city council.
I suppose.
Okay, there's a motion.
I mean, we
And a
could
second?
divide it into separate resolutions, but that would have to be rewrite the whole thing.
Right, or if you give us just a second. I mean, we can do this.
And would we have,
Vote on each one.
would we bring separate council then? Or we just wrap it all back? We could break out the design review as a separate thing and then have everything else as a package. We could, at your direction, I mean, we don't have to rewrite it tonight. We'll just take the text we already have and we can, rearrange it on the page to create one resolution about everything except the design review and another resolution that's just about the design review. Would that work for you?
That's what I was suggesting, just basically the findings sort of move around and
Right.
yeah.
Okay. I think we can do that. So if you direct us to do that and vote tonight, we'll just go fix the paperwork later.
Yeah. Is that okay? Is that all right with everyone?
I don't want to complicate it anymore. I like the design. I think it's personal taste as opposed to meeting the requirements. So I'd like to take a vote on the motion in the second.
Right, so right now on the floor, we have Commissioner Donaldson's motion, which is presumably for the staff recommendation, and there's a second on that.
But that's with the caveat of adding
Yes.
Adding
yes,
articulation and
with
some
her-
additional
And the
landscaping.
landscaping.
Right. So that's the motion on the floor. If there is a substitute motion that would be forwarded by another commissioner, then certainly, we would process it. But right now, we have Commissioner Donaldson's motion.
So you can have a substitute motion that has to be made and seconded, or a friendly amendment to the motion on the floor, and lacking both of those, then it's just the motion that's on the floor.
So I'll make that substitute motion to approve, to recommend to the city council approval of everything except the design review. Yes.
It seems like we're so close on the design, and we've been offering up some options that to take out design review, when we've actually spent so much time on the design on this, it seems like we're this close, and the timing on this project is really critical to us with the economy. I mean, it really is.
We're going to get to approving the design review. I'm just not going to vote for it. I mean, that's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a substitute motion. I have not heard a second for that motion yet. Apparently there is not a second.
Okay. Fails for lack of a second.
So are you ready to vote on the motion?
Yes. Yes.
And this is on Commissioner Donaldson's motion.
The only
Right,
motion?
yep.
Right. Commissioner Cardoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunkel is recused. Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Coomerly is excused. Vice Chair Tan?
Aye.
And Chair Moss.
No.
So we have 4 ayes, 1 no, 1 recusal, 1 excused. So the motion passes. We will forward your recommendation to the City Council with, I think, revised drawings before it goes to the City Council.
I work with Sarah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.